The night was quiet, and the desert stretched endlessly under a sky filled with stars. The air was cool, almost chilly, as if the vast emptiness of the land had soaked up all the warmth from the day. In the distance, faint lights blinked from small towns scattered across the horizon. It was peaceful until it wasn't. A low hum began to rise in the air, soft at first but growing louder with each passing second. People in nearby towns stepped outside their homes, looking up at the sky. Something strange was happening. A bright light appeared high above the desert, glowing brighter than any star or planet they had ever seen. At first glance it looked like an airplane, but there was no sound of engines. Then slowly the object descended, revealing itself to be far larger than anyone could have imagined. It wasn't just big, it was enormous. The spacecraft hovered silently over the desert floor, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. Now and then, parts of it shifted slightly as though it were alive. The sight sent shivers down people's spines. No one knew what it was, where it came from, or why it was here. All they knew was that it wasn't human. Inside the ship, a group of beings moved with purpose. They weren't like humans, not even close. Their bodies were tall and slender, their skin smooth and pale, almost translucent. Large almond-shaped eyes dominated their faces, glowing faintly in the dim light of the ship's interior. These were the Vaylons, a highly advanced species, known for their scientific achievements and logical minds. On their home planet, they were revered as explorers and thinkers, always seeking knowledge about the universe around them. Their leader, Kalen, stood at the center of the control room, his long fingers gliding over a panel of glowing symbols. He was calm, composed as always. To him, this mission was not just another exploration, it was critical. For years, the Vaylons had been studying Earth from afar, observing its inhabitants and their behaviors. What fascinated them most was humanity's ability to reproduce, a process so complex and unpredictable that it baffled even their greatest scientists. Kalen turned to his team, his voice steady and clear. "We are here to witness something extraordinary," he said. "Human reproduction is unlike anything we have encountered before. It is messy, chaotic, and yet somehow miraculous." His words hung in the air as the rest of the team nodded in agreement. They had chosen a specific location for their investigation, a small town nestled near the edge of the desert. There lived a young couple named Emily Dawson and Ryan Carter. Emily was 9 months pregnant, her belly round and heavy with the weight of new life. She and Ryan were ordinary people living ordinary lives, unaware that they were about to become part of something far greater than themselves. Emily sat on the couch in their cozy living room, rubbing her belly absent-mindedly. Her feet were propped up on a stool and she sighed softly. Pregnancy had been exhausting, but she couldn't wait to meet her baby. Ryan walked in carrying 2 cups of tea, handing one to her with a smile. "You okay?" he asked, sitting down beside her. "Yeah," Emily replied, taking a sip of her tea. "Just tired. I think little Ethan is practicing his soccer moves in there." Ryan chuckled, placing a hand on her stomach. "He's going to be a kicker, huh?" Before Emily could respond, the lights flickered. Both of them froze, staring at the ceiling. The hum they heard earlier had grown louder, filling the room with an eerie energy. Suddenly, 3 figures materialized out of thin air, standing in the middle of their living room. Emily gasped, clutching Ryan's arm tightly. The figures were unlike anything they had ever seen. Tall and otherworldly, they radiated an aura of calm authority. One of them stepped forward, holding a device that emitted a series of soft clicks and whirs. After a moment, a robotic voice spoke. "We mean you no harm," it said. "We are here to observe." Ryan stood up quickly, positioning himself between Emily and the strangers. "Observe what?" he demanded, his voice firm despite the fear bubbling inside him. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if processing the question. "The process of human childbirth," it replied. "It is unique. We seek to understand." Emily's heart raced. She wanted to scream, to run, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the way the aliens looked at her, not with malice or Curiosity, but with reverence. Or maybe it was the realization that running wouldn't do much good against beings who could appear out of nowhere. "What do you want from us?" Ryan asked, his tone softer now, but still wary. "To witness," the alien repeated. "To learn. Your permission is required." Ryan glanced at Emily, who gave a hesitant nod. "Fine," he said finally. "But if you hurt her or the baby, you'll regret it." The alien seemed to consider this for a moment before nodding. "Understood." And just like that, the aliens set to work. They moved silently around the house, setting up strange devices that hummed softly and glowed faintly. Emily watched them warily, her mind racing with questions she didn't dare ask. Who were they? Why were they here? And why did they care so much about childbirth? As the hours passed, Emily and Ryan tried to go about their evening as normally as possible, though it was anything but normal. The presence of the aliens was constant, their glowing eyes following every movement. Yet strangely, they didn't feel threatening. If anything, they seemed fascinated. Later that night, as Emily lay in bed, she couldn't help but think about what the aliens had said. Childbirth was unique, they claimed. Unique how? To her, it was just a part of being human, something billions of women had done before her. But maybe, she thought, there was more to it than she realized. Maybe there was something special about bringing new life into the world. Little did she know, her experience was about to change not only her life but also the lives of the beings watching her so intently. The days after the Valon's arrival were strange for Emily and Ryan. At first, they weren't sure what to make of their unexpected guests. The aliens didn't eat, sleep, or speak much. They just watched. They moved quietly through the house, their glowing eyes following Emily as if she were some kind of rare animal in a zoo. It was unsettling, but at the same time there was something oddly respectful about them. They didn't invade personal space unless necessary, and they seemed genuinely fascinated by even the smallest details of daily life. Emily tried to keep her routine as normal as possible. She cooked meals, folded laundry, and took short walks around the neighborhood. Ryan did his best to help, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being studied like lab rats. Still, he reminded himself that the Valons had promised not to harm them. For now, that was enough. One morning, Emily sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea and rubbing her belly absent-mindedly. The baby kicked gently, and she smiled despite herself. Ryan walked in, holding a plate of toast. "Hungry?" he asked, setting it down in front of her. "A little," Emily replied, taking a bite. "But I'm more tired than anything." "You should rest," Ryan said, sitting across from her. "You've got enough going on without these visitors." Emily nodded, glancing toward the living room. Two of the Valons stood near the window, their heads tilted slightly as they observed her. She sighed. "They're not exactly relaxing company." Ryan frowned. "Do you think they'll leave after the baby's born?" "I don't know," Emily admitted. "They haven't said much about their plans, just that they want to witness everything." Ryan leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Witness what, though? It's not like childbirth is some big mystery. People do it every day." "Not people like them," Emily said softly. She looked at the aliens again, her brow furrowing. "I think they're trying to learn something important." Ryan didn't respond right away. He stared at the Valons, his mind racing. What could they possibly hope to gain from watching a human give birth? Was it really just scientific curiosity, or was there something deeper at play? Later that afternoon, Kalen approached Emily and Ryan while they were sitting on the couch. His movements were slow and deliberate, as if he were trying not to startle them. In his hand, he held a small device that emitted a series of soft clicks and whirs. When he spoke, his voice came through the translator, calm and measured. "We wish to explain our purpose further," he said. "Your reproductive process is unique. We seek to understand its complexity." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Complexity? You mean like how babies are made?" Kalen tilted his head slightly, as if processing her words. In part, but also the emotional and physical aspects. On our world, reproduction is a controlled process. There is no pain, no uncertainty. Your method is different, Ryan snorted. Different is one way to put it. Emily elbowed him gently before turning back to Kalen. So, you're saying you've never seen anything like this before? Correct, Kalen replied. Our species has evolved beyond such chaos. Yet we believe there may be value in understanding it. Emily frowned, leaning forward slightly. Value? Like what? Kalen hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. Connection. Emotion. These are elements missing from our own experience. We suspect they play a role in your survival as a species. Ryan exchanged a glance with Emily. The idea of aliens studying human emotions was both bizarre and intriguing. So, you're here to learn about feelings? He asked skeptically. In a manner of speaking, Kalen said. We observe. We analyze. Perhaps we may adapt. Emily shook her head, still struggling to wrap her mind around the concept. This is all so weird. We understand your discomfort, Kalen said, but we assure you our intentions are pure. We mean no harm. Emily sighed, leaning back against the couch. I guess we don't have much choice but to trust you. Ryan nodded reluctantly. Just stay out of the way when the time comes, okay? This isn't exactly going to be a picnic. Kalen inclined his head slightly. Understood. As the days passed, the Valens became more integrated into the household, though they remained distant and formal. They continued to set up their strange devices which hummed softly and blinked with lights that pulsed rhythmically. Emily and Ryan tried to ignore them as much as possible, focusing instead on preparing for the baby's arrival. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily sat on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of orange and pink. Ryan joined her, handing her a cup of tea. How are you feeling? He asked, sitting beside her. Tired, Emily admitted. But okay, I just can't stop thinking about them. The aliens? Emily nodded. Yeah, why us? Out of everyone on Earth, why pick us? Ryan shrugged. Maybe because we're ordinary, or maybe they just got lucky. Or unlucky, Emily muttered. Ryan chuckled. Hey, look on the bright side. At least we'll have a good story to tell Ethan when he's older. Emily smiled faintly. If we survive long enough to tell it. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the evening, the chirping of crickets, the rustling of leaves in the breeze. Inside the house, the Valens moved quietly, their glowing eyes visible through the windows. Despite their odd presence, the night felt peaceful, almost serene. Later that night, as Emily lay in bed, she found herself thinking about the aliens again. What was it like to live in a world where everything was controlled, predictable, where there was no pain, no uncertainty, no chaos? She couldn't imagine it. To her, life was messy, unpredictable, full of ups and downs. And yet, wasn't that what made it beautiful? She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick gently. You're going to change the world, little one, she whispered. Even if it's just a tiny corner of it. Unbeknownst to her, the Valens were listening. From their positions in the hallway, they observed her quiet moment of reflection, their glowing eyes fixed on her face. They didn't understand everything about humanity, not yet, but they were beginning to see glimpses of something profound. Something that went beyond biology or logic. It was connection. It was love. And as the days turned into weeks, the Valens grew more determined than ever to witness it firsthand. The days passed quickly, and the Valens stayed close to Emily and Ryan, observing everything with an almost obsessive curiosity. They had set up their strange devices in every corner of the house, machines that hummed softly and blinked with lights that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Emily tried her best to ignore them, but it wasn't easy. Every time she turned around, one of the aliens was there watching her with those glowing eyes. It made her feel like she was living in some kind of science experiment. Ryan did his best to keep things normal. He cooked meals, talked to Emily about baby names, and even joked about how they'd need to baby-proof the house soon. But deep down, he was on edge. The aliens hadn't done anything threatening, yet, but their presence was constant and it weighed heavily on him. Still, he reminded himself that they had promised not to hurt Emily or the baby. For now, that was enough. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Emily felt a sharp pain in her lower back. She winced, placing a hand on her belly. Another wave of pain followed, stronger, this time. Her breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just a random ache, it was the real thing. Labor had started. "Ryan," she called out, her voice shaking. "It's time." Ryan rushed to her side, his heart pounding. "Are you sure?" Emily nodded, gripping his arm tightly as another contraction hit. "Yes, we need to go. To the hospital." Ryan didn't waste a moment. He helped Emily to her feet, supporting her as they made their way to the car. The Valens, who had been standing silently in the living room, moved swiftly to follow them. One of them activated a small device, and within seconds the entire group disappeared from sight, cloaked by some kind of invisibility technology. The drive to the hospital felt like it took forever. Emily clenched her teeth through each contraction, trying to focus on her breathing. Ryan kept glancing at her, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. In the back seat, the Valens sat silently, their glowing eyes hidden beneath their cloaking field. Though they couldn't be seen, their presence was undeniable. When they arrived at the hospital, Ryan helped Emily inside while the Valens slipped in unnoticed behind them. Nurses greeted them warmly, guiding Emily to a private room where they could prepare for the delivery. Ryan stayed by her side, holding her hand and whispering words of encouragement. Meanwhile, the Valens positioned themselves around the room, their invisible forms hovering near the walls as their devices recorded every detail. The hours dragged on, and the pain only grew worse. Emily's face was pale, beads of sweat forming on her forehead as she pushed through each contraction. The nurses and doctors worked tirelessly, checking her vitals and offering support. To anyone else, it would have looked like a typical childbirth, a natural human process. But for the Valens, it was unlike anything they had ever witnessed. Back on their home planet, reproduction was a sterile, controlled procedure. There were no emotions, no physical strain, no unpredictability. Babies were created in specialized chambers, monitored by machines until they were ready to be born. It was efficient, logical, and completely devoid of what the Valens were seeing now. As Emily struggled through the final stages of labor, the Valens watched in awe. They saw the determination in her eyes, the way she gritted her teeth and pushed despite the pain. They heard the love in Ryan's voice as he encouraged her, telling her how strong she was. And when the baby finally emerged, crying loudly and filling the room with life, the Valens froze. It wasn't just the miracle of birth that stunned them. It was everything surrounding it. The raw emotion, the connection between mother and child, the sheer willpower it took to bring new life into the world. For beings who valued logic above all else, this was overwhelming. Their minds raced, trying to process what they were witnessing, but it was too much. One by one, the Valens collapsed, their bodies slumping to the floor as their systems overloaded. Even Kalen, their leader, fell unconscious, his glowing eyes dimming as he hit the ground. The nurses and doctors barely noticed, too focused on Emily and the newborn baby to pay attention to the strange thuds coming from the corners of the room. Emily, exhausted but relieved, held her baby close, tears streaming down her face. Ryan kissed her forehead, his own eyes glistening with emotion. "You did it," he whispered. "He's perfect." In the chaos of the moment, no one realized that the Valens were lying unconscious on the floor. Their devices continued to record, capturing every second of the emotional scene unfolding before them. It wasn't until later, after the excitement had died down and the baby had been cleaned and wrapped in a soft blanket, that someone finally noticed. A nurse spotted Kalen first, his pale form sprawled awkwardly against the wall. At first, she thought he was some kind of mannequin, but then she saw the faint glow in his eyes. She gasped, stepping back in shock. Within moments, the rest of the medical staff gathered around, staring at the aliens in disbelief. "What are they?" one of the doctors asked, his voice trembling. No one had an answer. The Valons remained motionless, their breathing shallow but steady. Whatever had happened to them, it was clear they weren't a threat, at least not right now. The hospital staff decided to leave them alone, unsure of what else to do. Meanwhile, Emily and Ryan were oblivious to the commotion. They were too focused on their son, marveling at his tiny fingers and toes, his soft cries, his perfect little face. They named him Ethan, a name they had chosen weeks ago. As Ryan held the baby in his arms, he looked at Emily and smiled. "We did good," he said softly. Emily nodded, her eyes heavy with exhaustion but shining with pride. "We really did." Outside the hospital, the night was quiet once again. The stars twinkled in the sky, unaware of the drama that had unfolded below. Inside, the Valens began to stir, their systems slowly rebooting. When Kalen opened his eyes, he found himself lying on the floor, surrounded by curious humans. For a moment he was disoriented, his mind struggling to make sense of what had happened. Then it hit him. The emotions, the connection, the sheer intensity of it all. It had been too much for their logical minds to handle. But as Kalen looked around the room at the happy family cradling their newborn child, he realized something important. Humanity wasn't just advanced because of its technology or intelligence, it was advanced because of its heart. And for the first time in his long life, Kalen felt something he had never experienced before. Wonder. When the Valens finally regained consciousness, they found themselves back on their ship, lying on smooth metallic surfaces that glowed faintly with a soft blue light. Their bodies felt heavy, as though the weight of what they had witnessed was still pressing down on them. Kalen opened his eyes first, blinking slowly as his mind struggled to process everything. The memory of Emily's labor, the cries of the newborn baby, and the overwhelming emotions radiating from the humans, it all came rushing back in waves. Kalen sat up, his long fingers brushing against the cool surface beneath him. He looked around at his team, who were also beginning to stir. One by one they rose, their glowing eyes dimmer than usual but still filled with a mix of awe and confusion. None of them spoke right away. They simply stared at each other, trying to make sense of what had happened. Finally, one of the scientists broke the silence. "What was that?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Kalen took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling slowly. "It was more than we anticipated," he admitted. "The emotional intensity, it overwhelmed us." Another scientist nodded, his hands clasped tightly together. "We are trained to observe, to analyze. But this was beyond logic. It was raw, unfiltered emotion." Kalen stood up, pacing slowly across the room. His movements were deliberate, measured, as if he were trying to steady himself. "Yes," he said, "and that is why we failed. We approached this task as scientists, believing we could understand it through data alone. But what we witnessed was not just biology, it was art. It was life itself." The others listened silently, their expressions thoughtful. For beings who valued logic above all else, this realization was both humbling and unsettling. They had spent their entire lives studying the universe, seeking knowledge and understanding. Yet here, on this small planet called Earth, they had encountered something they couldn't quantify or explain. Kalen stopped pacing and turned to face his team. "We must review the recordings," he said firmly. "Every detail. We need to understand not just what happened, but why it affected us so deeply." The team nodded, and within moments, the walls of the ship transformed into screens, displaying footage of Emily's labor and delivery. The images were vivid, capturing every moment. The pain on Emily's face, the tears in Ryan's eyes, the joy that followed the baby's first cry. The Valens watched intently, their glowing eyes fixed on the scenes unfolding before them. They replayed the events. Something remarkable began to happen. The initial shock and confusion started to fade, replaced by a growing sense of admiration. They saw how Emily endured hours of pain without giving up, how Ryan stayed by her side, offering words of encouragement and support. They saw the way the couple held each other's hands, their connection unshaken even in the most difficult moments. One of the scientists leaned forward, her voice soft but full of wonder. They did this together, not just physically, but emotionally. They shared the experience. Kaylin nodded. Yes, and that is what makes it extraordinary. On our world, reproduction is a solitary act, devoid of emotion. But for humans, it is a bond, a partnership, a celebration of life. The team fell silent again, absorbing these words. For the first time in their lives, they began to see the limitations of their own ways. Their sterile, controlled methods of reproduction seemed hollow compared to the messy, chaotic beauty of human childbirth. It wasn't just about creating life, it was about love, connection, and sacrifice. After several hours of reviewing the footage, Kaylin made a decision. "We cannot leave yet," he said. "There is more to learn here, about humanity, about ourselves. We must reach out to them again." His team looked at him in surprise. "Reach out?" one of them asked. "After what happened?" "Yes," Kaylin replied. "This time we will not approach them as observers. We will approach them as learners." Back on Earth, Emily and Ryan had returned home with their newborn son, Ethan. Life quickly settled into a rhythm of feedings, diaper changes, and sleepless nights. The presence of the aliens lingered in their minds, but they hadn't seen or heard from them since the hospital. At first, they wondered if the Valans had left for good, but deep down, they suspected otherwise. One evening, as Emily rocked Ethan to sleep, she noticed a faint hum in the air. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it sent a shiver down her spine. She glanced at Ryan, who was sitting nearby reading a book. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Ryan paused, listening carefully. "Yeah," he said after a moment. "What is it?" Before Emily could answer, 3 figures materialized in the middle of the living room. The Valens had returned. Emily tensed, clutching Ethan protectively to her chest. Ryan stood up quickly, stepping between her and the aliens. "What do you want now?" he demanded, his voice firm despite the unease bubbling inside him. Kaylin stepped forward, holding out a small crystalline object. It shimmered softly, reflecting the light from the room. "We come in peace," he said through the translator, "and with gratitude." Emily frowned, her grip on Ethan loosening slightly. "Gratitude? For what?" "For allowing us to witness your strength," Kaylin replied. "Your courage, your love. These are qualities we have long forgotten on our world." Ryan crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. "So, you're saying you learned something from us?" "Yes," Kaylin said simply. "And we wish to learn more." Emily hesitated, glancing at Ryan. There was something different about the Valens this time. Their demeanor was warmer, less clinical. They didn't seem like detached scientists anymore. They seemed curious, almost human. "Why? Should we trust you?" Ryan asked, his tone softer now but still cautious. Kaylin inclined his head slightly. "You have no reason to. But we offer this as a gesture of goodwill." He extended the crystalline object toward Emily. "A gift." Emily hesitated for a moment before reaching out to take it. The crystal was cool to the touch, its surface smooth and flawless. As she held it, she felt a strange warmth spreading through her fingers, as if the object carried some kind of energy. "What is it?" she asked, turning it over in her hand. "It is a symbol of respect," Kaylin explained, "and a reminder of what you have taught us." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Taught you? About what?" "About life," Kaylin said. "About connection, about the importance of emotion." Emily and Ryan exchanged a glance, unsure of what to say. The Vaylon's words were unexpected, even touching. But they still didn't fully trust them. Finally, Emily spoke. "If you really want to learn, then maybe you should sit down and talk to us. Like people." Kalen nodded, his glowing eyes softening. "We would be honored." The Vaylons moved to sit on the floor, their movements careful and deliberate. Emily and Ryan joined them, creating an odd but strangely intimate circle. Over tea, they began to share stories of motherhood, fatherhood, and the challenges of raising children. The Vaylons listened intently, their faces filled with wonder as they absorbed every word. For hours, the conversation flowed freely. Emily talked about the joys and struggles of pregnancy, while Ryan shared funny anecdotes about preparing for the baby's arrival. The Vaylons asked questions, their curiosity genuine and heartfelt. In turn, they shared glimpses of their own culture, describing their sterile, emotionless methods of reproduction and admitting how empty it felt compared to what they had witnessed. By the end of the night, something had shifted. The barrier between human and alien had begun to dissolve, replaced by a tentative but growing understanding. Emily and Ryan realized that the Vaylons weren't so different from them. They were just searching for meaning, for connection in their own way. As the clock struck midnight, Kalen stood up, signaling that it was time to leave. "Thank you," he said, bowing slightly. "You have given us much to think about." Emily smiled, holding Ethan close. "Maybe next time you can show us something about your world." Kalen's glowing eyes brightened slightly. "Perhaps," he said. "Until then, may your family thrive." With that, the Vaylons disappeared, leaving behind only the faintest trace of their presence. Emily and Ryan sat in silence for a moment, the crystal still resting in Emily's hand. "Well," Ryan said finally, breaking the quiet, "that was something." Emily chuckled softly. "Yeah, something amazing." As they gazed down at Ethan, sleeping peacefully in his mother's arms, they couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. Whatever the future held, they knew they had played a part in bridging two worlds, and maybe, just maybe, making them a little brighter. The days that followed the Vaylon's second visit felt different. Emily and Ryan couldn't quite put their finger on it, but there was a shift in the air, a sense that something profound had happened. The aliens hadn't returned since that night, but their presence lingered in small ways. The crystalline object Kalen had given Emily sat on the kitchen counter, catching the sunlight during the day and casting faint, shimmering reflections across the walls. It was a reminder of the strange yet meaningful connection they had formed with beings from another world. Emily found herself thinking about the Vaylons often. She wondered what they were doing now, how they were processing everything they had witnessed. Were they back on their ship, analyzing data? Or were they somewhere else, sharing their experiences with others of their kind? Ryan, too, thought about them, though he didn't say much. He was still cautious, unsure if trusting the aliens was the right thing to do. But even he couldn't deny that their last encounter had been different, kinder, more genuine. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky, in shades of orange and pink, Emily stood by the window, cradling Ethan in her arms. The baby cooed softly, his tiny fingers grasping at the air. Ryan walked in carrying 2 cups of tea. "Here," he said, handing one to her. "You look like you could use this." Emily smiled, taking the cup with her free hand. "Thanks." She took a sip, letting the warmth spread through her chest. "I was just thinking about them." "The aliens?" Ryan asked, sitting down on the couch. "Yeah," Emily replied, glancing at the crystal on the counter. "Do you think they'll come back?" Ryan shrugged. "Hard to say. They seemed pretty serious about learning, though." "I hope they do," Emily said softly. "It felt good, you know? Talking to them, sharing our story." Ryan nodded slowly. "Yeah, I guess it did." They sat in silence for a while, watching Ethan wiggle and squirm in Emily's arms. The baby let out a soft gurgle and both parents chuckled. Life had changed so much since his arrival, filling their home with chaos, laughter, and love. It was messy, unpredictable, and beautiful. Far above Earth, aboard their massive spacecraft, the Valans were deep in discussion. Kalen stood at the center of the control room, surrounded by his team. The glow in their eyes was brighter now, filled with a mix of excitement and determination. They had spent hours reviewing the recordings from Emily and Ryan's home, dissecting every word, every gesture. Each member of the team had taken notes, jotting down observations and insights that challenged everything they thought they knew about reproduction and emotion. "We underestimated them," one of the scientists admitted, her voice tinged with awe. "Their ability to create life. It is not just biological, it is emotional, spiritual even." Kalen nodded. "Yes, and that is why we must act. Our people need to understand this, to experience it." Another scientist leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "But how? Our culture has evolved beyond such chaos. How can we reintroduce emotion without disrupting our way of life?" "It will not be easy," Kalen acknowledged, "but it is necessary. For too long we have valued logic above all else. We have forgotten the importance of connection, of feeling. Humanity has shown us that these things are not weaknesses, they are strengths." The team fell silent, considering his words. They knew he was right. Their sterile, controlled methods of reproduction had kept their species alive, but at what cost? Without emotion, without connection, their lives felt hollow, empty. If they wanted to thrive, not just survive, they needed to change. After a long pause, Kalen spoke again. "We will begin by sharing what we have learned. We will show our people the recordings, explain the significance of what we witnessed. And then," he paused, his glowing eyes scanning the room, "then we will reach out to humanity once more, not as observers or learners, but as partners." His team exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of surprise and admiration. This was a bold plan, one that would require careful execution. But they trusted Kalen and they believed in the importance of what they had discovered. Back on Earth, life continued as usual for Emily and Ryan. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of the Valans began to fade slightly, becoming more like a vivid dream than reality. Still, they couldn't shake the feeling that the aliens were watching them somehow. Occasionally, Emily would catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of her eye, a flicker of light, a shadow moving where no shadow should be. Each time, she dismissed it as her imagination, but part of her wondered if the Valans were still nearby, observing silently. One night, as Emily tucked Ethan into his crib, she noticed something unusual outside the window. A soft glow illuminated the backyard, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Her breath caught in her throat as she stepped closer, peering through the glass. The glow grew brighter, and soon 3 figures emerged from the darkness. The Valans. Emily froze, her heart racing. She turned to call for Ryan, but before she could, the aliens raised their hands in a gesture of peace. Kalen stepped forward, his glowing eyes meeting hers through the window. Slowly, he pressed a button on a device in his hand and a robotic voice spoke. "We mean no harm. May we enter?" Emily hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. Finally, she nodded, unlocking the door and stepping aside to let them in. Ryan appeared moments later, his expression wary but calm. "What do you want this time?" he asked. Kalen inclined his head slightly. "To share, to connect." Emily frowned. "Share what?" "Our findings," Kalen replied, "and our gratitude." Without waiting for permission, the Valan set up a small device in the center of the living room. It hummed softly, projecting images onto the walls. Emily and Ryan watched in amazement as scenes from their earlier conversations played out, moments they had almost forgotten. There was Emily talking about the challenges of pregnancy, Ryan laughing as he described setting up the nursery, and both of them holding Ethan close, their faces filled with love. "These are your stories," Kalen explained. "Stories of strength, courage, and connection. We wish to share them with our people, to teach them what we have learned." Emily's eyes widened. "You're showing this to your whole planet?" Yes, Kalen said. And more. We wish to invite you to join us. Ryan crossed his arms, his brow furrowing. Join you where? In our efforts to bridge our worlds, Kalen replied. To create a partnership based on understanding and mutual respect. Emily glanced at Ryan, her heart pounding. What do you think? She whispered. Ryan hesitated, his mind racing. This was a big decision, one that could change their lives forever. But as he looked at Emily and Ethan, he realized something important. The Valens weren't perfect, but they were trying, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Finally, he nodded. Okay, he said, but only if you promise to keep us safe. Kalen placed a hand over his chest, his glowing eyes steady. You have our word. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Ryan worked closely with the Valens, helping them prepare for a grand presentation to their people. The aliens shared more about their culture, explaining their history and struggles. In turn, Emily and Ryan taught them about human traditions, things like family dinners, bedtime stories, and the simple joy of holding hands. When the day of the presentation arrived, the Valens transported Emily, Ryan, and Ethan aboard their ship. The vessel was vast and otherworldly, its walls shimmering like liquid metal. As they entered the main chamber, they were greeted by hundreds of Valens, their glowing eyes fixed on the human family with a mix of curiosity and reverence. Kalen stood at the front of the room, his voice steady as he addressed his people. Today we honor not just the miracle of life but the power of connection. These humans have shown us that emotion is not a weakness. It is a gift. Let us learn from them, grow with them, and build a future together. The room erupted in soft murmurs, the Valens exchanging glances filled with wonder and hope. Emily held Ethan close, tears streaming down her face as she realized the magnitude of what they had accomplished. They weren't just ordinary parents. They were ambassadors, bridging two worlds and paving the way for something extraordinary. As the Valens applauded, their glowing eyes shining brighter than ever, Emily and Ryan exchanged a glance. They didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. Their little family had made a difference, and that was something worth celebrating. The presentation aboard the Valen ship was unlike anything Emily and Ryan had ever experienced. The chamber was vast, its walls shimmering with a soft, silvery light that seemed to pulse gently, almost like a heartbeat. Hundreds of Valens stood around them, their glowing eyes fixed on the human family with a mix of curiosity and admiration. It was overwhelming, but also strangely beautiful. Kalen stood at the center of the room, his tall figure commanding attention. He spoke in a calm, steady voice, explaining everything they had learned from Emily and Ryan. He described the emotional intensity of childbirth, the bond between parents, and the joy of raising a child. He played recordings of their conversations, showing moments where Emily talked about the challenges of pregnancy, and Ryan shared funny stories about preparing for Ethan's arrival. The Valens watched and listened intently, their expressions softening as they absorbed the lessons. When Kalen finished speaking, the room fell silent. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. Then, one by one, the Valens began to murmur, softly, their glowing eyes bright with wonder. Some of them stepped forward, bowing slightly to Emily and Ryan as a gesture of respect. Others exchanged quiet words, their voices filled with excitement and hope. Emily held Ethan close, her heart pounding. She glanced at Ryan, who gave her a small, reassuring smile. They didn't fully understand what was happening, but they could feel the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about sharing their story. It was about changing an entire species. After the presentation, Kalen approached Emily and Ryan, his expression thoughtful. Your words have touched our people deeply, he said. They will not forget this. Emily nodded, her voice soft but steady. I hope it helps you. That's all we wanted, to share something meaningful. It already has, Kalen replied. But there is more we wish to do. We want to continue this partnership, Not just with you, but with your world. Ryan frowned slightly. What do you mean? We wish to open communication with your leaders, Kalen explained. To share what we have learned and work together for the benefit of both our species. Emily's eyes widened. You're talking about diplomacy? Yes, Kalen said. This is only the beginning. Back on Earth, news of the Valen's presence spread quickly. At first, people were skeptical, even fearful. Stories of mysterious lights in the sky and strange encounters made headlines around the world. But when footage of the presentation aboard the Velan ship was released, with Emily and Ryan's permission, the tide began to turn. People watched in awe as the Valans bowed to the human family, their glowing eyes filled with respect and gratitude. It was undeniable proof that these beings weren't here to harm. They were here to learn. Governments scrambled to respond, setting up meetings with the Valans to discuss the possibility of cooperation. Scientists, philosophers, and cultural experts joined the conversation, eager to understand more about the aliens' intentions. Emily and Ryan found themselves at the center of it all, attending press conferences and interviews alongside Kalen and his team. At first, it was exhausting. The constant attention, the endless questions. It was hard to adjust to such a public life. But over time, they grew more comfortable, learning how to navigate their new roles as ambassadors. They spoke openly about their experiences, emphasizing the importance of connection and understanding. Their message resonated deeply, inspiring millions of people to rethink their assumptions about aliens and about humanity itself. Ethan became a symbol of hope during this time. Photos of him smiling in Emily's arms went viral, spreading across social media and news outlets worldwide. People marveled at the idea that a tiny baby had played such a pivotal role in bridging two worlds. For Emily and Ryan, it was humbling to see their son become a global icon, but they never lost sight of the fact that he was, first and foremost, their child. As weeks turned into months, the partnership between humans and Valans grew stronger. Joint research projects were launched, focusing on everything from medicine to environmental sustainability. The Valans shared their advanced technology, helping to solve problems that had long plagued humanity: clean energy, disease prevention, and even food shortages. In return, humans offered insights into creativity, art, and emotion, teaching the Valans how to embrace the chaos and beauty of life. Kalen remained a key figure in the collaboration, often visiting Emily and Ryan's home to check on their progress. He brought gifts from his planet, strange glowing plants that thrived in low light and musical instruments that produced hauntingly beautiful sounds. Emily and Ryan reciprocated by teaching him about human traditions, like baking, cookies, or celebrating holidays. These small exchanges became some of the most cherished moments for both sides, deepening their bond in ways no one had anticipated. One evening, as the sun set over the desert, Emily and Ryan sat on the porch with Kalen, watching Ethan play in the yard. The baby giggled as he chased after a glowing Valan toy, his laughter filling the air. Kalen watched silently, his glowing eyes reflecting the warm hues of the sunset. "You have given us so much," Kalen said finally, breaking the peaceful silence. "More than you realize." Emily smiled, leaning back in her chair. "We've gained a lot too. You've shown us that we're not alone in the universe, and that we are capable of more than we thought," Ryan added. "Working together, we can achieve things neither of us could do alone." Kalen nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Yes, that is the true power of connection." As the stars began to appear in the night sky, the three of them sat quietly, savoring the moment. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be challenges, misunderstandings, and setbacks, but they were ready to face them together. For the first time in history, two vastly different species had found common ground, united by a shared desire to grow, to learn, and to build a better future. Years later, when Ethan was old enough to ask questions, Emily and Ryan told him the story of how he had changed the world, They showed him pictures of the Valens, explained their mission, and described the incredible journey they had been part of. Ethan listened wide-eyed, his imagination sparked by the tales of aliens and adventure. "Do you think I'll ever meet them?" he asked one day, clutching the crystalline object Kalen had given his mother. "I'm sure you will," Emily replied, ruffling his hair affectionately. "They'll always be a part of our family." And she meant it. The Valens had left an indelible mark on their lives, not just as visitors from another world, but as friends who had helped them see the best in themselves. Together, they had proven that even in a universe full of differences, there was room for understanding, for love, and for hope. Far above Earth, aboard their massive spacecraft, the Valens continued their mission of exploration and learning. But they carried something new with them now, a piece of humanity etched into their hearts forever. And whenever they looked down at the blue-green planet below, they remembered the family who had taught them the true meaning of connection.